Welcome to the Breakaway Business 4-Week Intensive. First thing I would ask you to do is go over to the chat and put in who you are and what you do and your contact information so that we can get to know each other a little bit better. And I will save the chat and I'll make that available for everyone later. As I said, this is a 4-week intensive, so it is 2 days a week for 4 weeks. Let's talk a little bit about what that's going to look like. If I can get this to go. All right. So Tuesdays are content and training days, and those are the days I will go through the content. I'll talk a little bit more about what that's going to look like. I just heard, so I need to... So Susie, you would know, where would I let somebody in?
Go down to participants and then click on participants.
There you go. All right. There you
Okay.
go. Okay, now I got it. All right, welcome. Hi, Laurel. Hi, Denise. It's Janet. So we're just getting started because I kind of am funny about time. I want to respect everybody's time. So once again, welcome to the, I'll just go back to welcome to the 4-week intensive. This is week 1 and we're going to talk about building the foundation. So I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like as we go through. So Tuesdays are going to be content training days, and those are the days I'll go through the content. I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like going forward, so you'll have an idea of what we're going to cover. And then also that will be when you submit your questions. So and just know that I'm managing the chat and doing all that at the same time. So you guys have all been on Zoom, you know what the drill is. So anyway, so submit your questions. Thursdays will be live Q&A. You can also submit your questions on the Facebook group. So if you haven't already, go ask to join the Facebook group. In the emails I've been sending out, I've sent you a link. I will send up the link again in a recap after this call with a link to the replay, which will be in the Facebook group. And then complete the questionnaire. That kind of helps me a little bit understand who everybody is and where they are. There's a link to that as well. So please complete that. That'll give me, like I said, a better idea of who everybody is. Anybody who's joining as we're joining, please go over to the chat and put in who you are and what you do so we can get to know each other a little bit more. And also I'd ask that you put your contact information in there as well. So let's keep going as I'm letting more people in. Perfect. All right. All right, so week 1 is all about foundation. And I'll just preface it to say this is really the basics, right? This is going to be talking about some of the basic things. None of this is going to be something, I don't think, to anybody that they're going to be like, wow, that was the most impactful thing I've ever heard. But here's why I go to the basics and I really, really focus on the basics, is because we're in kind of a different time. We've all been affected by the pandemic, by the closing down of our businesses. We've all been affected by it in different ways, but we've all been affected by it. So I'm going to go through, like I said, the foundation and the basics today, which is all work that I would encourage everybody to do. I'm sure you've all done it before, and I'm sure you've done it many times, but I encourage you to do this same work, even though it's basics and it's foundational, to see what the differences are in where we are in our businesses today versus where we were March 15th or whenever this all happened. So I think it's really important to go and revisit that. So the basics include your why. Why are you doing this? Goal setting. We'll talk a little bit about goal setting. Determining your business. I didn't know because I only received 2 of the questionnaire, so I didn't know if there was anybody on here who was just kind of starting a business or looking at starting a business. So I'm going to go one slide on that. I'll go really quickly through that because I don't know if there is anybody who that relates to, but there's some interesting stuff there. So I'm going to go through that, and then I'm going to talk about the target market and how to determine who they are and really how to address their particular needs. So I want to start with, it all starts with your why. So your why is the underlying compelling reason that you do what you do, regardless of what that is. So I really want you to think about what is your why as it pertains to your business. Identify what it is. What is the thing that drives you to do your business? What is the underlying thing? Very, very rarely does anybody go in business particularly to generate a lot of money without an idea of what the big picture is, what their reason is, whether it's their kids or whether it's their legacy or whether it really is, I want a big house and a boat and whatever. So I want you to spend a few minutes and identify your why. Your why will really drive you towards your goals. It is something that will absolutely save you on the days which we all have, you don't want to do what you're doing, you don't want to work that day, whatever. Your why will definitely drive you. The why will get you back on track when you falter. And I've been coaching for 15 years. I've coached over 1,000 people. I don't know anybody who hasn't had a moment in their business or in their life where things went awry, and they just do. And for a lot of us, we're in the middle of that awry, right? We're in the middle of trying to figure out how our businesses have changed, how we're going to change, how we're going to meet that challenge on the other side of this. So your why is a really good thing to rely on, to go back to when you have those days of challenge or falter, or you question it, or you get stuck, because we all have those days. So your first piece of homework, by the way, I'm going to give you a lot of homework because that's part of the intensive part. So your first piece of homework is spend 15 to 30 minutes in the next couple of days and really explore the reasons that you want to build your business, the reasons why you grow your business. What's the underlying thing that is the fire in the belly that gets you through every single day, that excites you? And then I write it down and put it somewhere where you can get to it, because like I said, there will be challenging days ahead, and your why is a really significant thing that can help you through that. The next thing is to set your goals. So set your goals for the next 6 months or 12 months. If you want, set your goal for the next 4 weeks. It's up to you. I'm a big goal setter, but I'm also one of those people who I set them and I look at them maybe once a quarter. I don't look at them every single day. But goals are very, very important. And I think what a lot of us do is we'll set our goals in January or December for the year, and then we put them in a file. And I'm definitely can be accused of putting them in a file and sticking them there, and then not even looking at them. And, oh yeah, what are those? Let me get them back out. So make them, and then make sure you readjust them. You look at them as you go through. And the other thing that I do is I share them with an accountability partner of mine. So I have a guy, his name is Jim. He's a really good friend of mine. Susie knows him. He's another business coach. And so we, at the beginning of the year or December, we get together, we set our goals, and then we once a quarter get together and kind of talk about where we are and what we want to do and hold each other accountable, because that's an important part of it. And I don't only set my business goals, I set my personal goals as well. So if you feel like adding that, add that. Definitely write them down. I use SMART goals. I don't remember what they all. It's specific, measurable, achievable, something or other, realistic and timely. So anyway, so I use SMART goals, but any way you want to write them, just make sure you do them. And like I said, I'll keep coming back to this certainly today, because I think we really are we're in a new space, right? We are trying to figure out what it's going to look like as we come out of it, out of this, shelter in place and pandemic, and what our businesses are going to look like. And I'll talk a little bit more later about I actually have seen some shifts in my target market and the way that they react and they think. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I think it's important, if you've already got your goals done, to take them out and look at them again in light of what's going on in our world today. So I think that's an important thing to do as well. And then, so your homework is write down your goals and share them with at least one person. If you want, share them in the Facebook page. If you want to do that, share them with us. That would be awesome. Keep them where you can see them. and then review them. Like I said, I review mine at least every quarter, but certainly take a look at them periodically and adjust them as time goes on. And now I'm clicking and it's not going. There we go. All right, quickly. If there's anybody on here who is starting a business and hasn't started one yet, I'll just really quickly go through this because this is just some thoughts for how to figure out what that looks like. Step number one, figure out what is your skill set. What do you know how to do? How have you made money in the past? Second is, what have you done? What skills have you used on other jobs? I've noticed people through the years who have said, well, people come to me and tell me I'm good at that. I'm a good project manager. I'm a good organizer. I'm a good people person. I'm a good whatever. So what people have also commented about you that you're good at, and what things that you know that you are good at. And that's a great starting point. What do you like to do? So I don't know if I'm a huge proponent of find your passion and build your business around that. I believe that having passion for what you do is important, but I'm not exactly sure that passion can do it alone. So I use an example of a woman that I coached a long time ago. She worked at Yahoo in the HR department, and she wanted to start a real estate company. And I forget what she wanted to do in real estate, whether she wanted to sell homes or fix and flip, I forget. But she wanted to, and I said, well, so what kind of experience do you have? She says, I have no experience in that. So that's kind of a hard jump or a big jump. Not to say that it's not doable if you find a mentor that can help you do that. So in my experience, I went from working in a sales job for corporate America. When I quit my job, the first thing I did was I did land development in Mexico. Now, the skills that I used in my job, project management and people skills and sales and all of that, because I raised a lot of money to do it, certainly helped. But I had a mentor that knew how to do exactly that. So I partnered up with him, and that really helped. So just some ideas on determining your business. I have a sheet that's got 1,000 ideas of different businesses. So I will share that on the Facebook page for anybody who might be looking to start a business. And then, like I said, just decide and then start. Because here's the beautiful thing. People get caught up in spending a lot of time to figure out exactly what they want to do. And at the end of the day, that's not the critical thing. Whether you're selling pencils or you're selling coffee mugs, it doesn't matter. When you build a business, the foundational things that you do are the same, and the widgets can be switched out. So you won't lose all of the work that you do when you build a business if you decide to go in another direction. So just know that. Okay, so the next piece is to create a business plan. So you absolutely need a plan for your business. It starts with the goals, but the plan is really, what are you going to do to achieve those goals? So your plan could be 120 days, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 5 years, but you need to have a business plan. It also needs to be written down. So it's super important that that is also written down. There are a lot of templates available online, and I will share a number of those with you on the Facebook page. But I would say to you, as you see, I've already started to give you homework. I'm going to give you a lot of homework, and I'll talk in a minute about each phase of what we're going to cover in this course. Once you get through this course, you will already have a fairly robust business plan that you can execute on. So if you stick through it and you really do the homework and you really do the work as you go through this, you'll already have a phenomenal starting point for a robust business plan. So the homework there is to start your business plan, or if you've already got one, reassess your business plan through your why, the new goals that you have or adjusted goals that you have, and then the components that we'll talk about as we go through kind of building this whole framework, this whole business plan. The next step is to find a model company. So a model company is a company that is like yours, that is kind of at the next level of where you want to be. And so it could be a company, it could be a much, much larger company. It could be a company that's just a little bit more further along than you are. But it's important to find a company that you want to emulate. So once you've identified that, and there's a couple of components. One is it doesn't have to be in the same industry as you. It helps if it's in the same industry as you. So if Susie was to go find a model company, she might go find a publishing company that publishes, authors that's at that next level to kind of figure out how she can emulate what they do. Why reinvent the wheel when there's already companies out there doing that? So it doesn't necessarily have to be in the same industry. It's good if it does, if it is, but it's not super important. What is important, however, is that they have the same target market as you. So you could be selling watches, and I could be selling luxury vehicles, but we have the same target market. So I could learn a lot by how you're selling a Rolex so that I can, because we're selling it to the same people pretty much, I could learn a lot by how you do that, and it could help me better market how to sell luxury cars. So same target market is important, industry not so much, but the same target market is. And what you look at is what are the products that they sell, right? So help you fine tune what products you want to sell by seeing what's most popular, what works for them. And then how do they market? I mean, it's so critical. What are the words that they use? What's the terminology that they use? What media do they do? Or do they do social media? Do they do print? Is it online? Is it offline? What photos do they use? What pictures do they use? Do they use video? A great way to figure all of that out is to identify a model company or a number of model companies and then opt in and get their emails. I mean, I've done that for years. I'll go to other business coaches, to other people, and I'll opt into their emails, and then I'll look at the way they structure them and what they say, and do they do cute little emojis? Do they do bullet points? Do they do 3 lines? Do they do video? And you can learn a lot by looking at successful companies and how they market. And like I said, the words that they use, where they market. So find a model company or two, and then start doing some research on the products, the market, how they market, where they market, and all of those different factors. Oh, and then terminology. All right. The other thing that I love, and for any of you who know that I have a podcast called The Breakaway Entrepreneur, I am unbelievably fascinated by the mindset of the entrepreneur. And I think we can all agree as entrepreneurs that our mindset is very different than people who work for somebody else for a living. And I'm just fascinated by that. So like I said, I started this podcast called The Breakaway Entrepreneur, and I interview amazing people like Susie Pruden on what it's like and how entrepreneurs think differently. And so there's some traits that I think entrepreneurs have, and this is just a very short list of them. But I want you to think about your mindset as an entrepreneur. And if it's an area of interest and it's an area of things that you could explore and learn more, I love books about leadership, and I've read a gazillion of them. And I every time I read one, I learn something that helps me be a better leader or a better entrepreneur. So just something that I'm fascinated with, so I brought it up. And I invite you to think about it, the traits that you have as entrepreneurs that make you great entrepreneurs, and some of the traits that you have that you might think, I could use some work on that, or I want to explore that a little bit more, because the mindset is just such an amazing thing when it comes to being an entrepreneur and to be a successful entrepreneur. All right, so I want to talk about your target market. So your target market is who is your ideal client. So who are the people that you sell and you market to? Who are the people, and let me put it to you even a better way, who are the people who buy your product, right? And it's so important as the first step to really understanding how to effectively market, to understand who your target market is. So we all know when we think about target market, we all think about demographics. Where do they live? What's their income level? What's their education level? Male, female, age. Those are all really important things to understand what the demographics are of the people that you're selling to. Because you would sell very differently to a 25-year-old than a 40-year-old or a 60-year-old. So it's important to understand this. You sell differently to people who live in California than perhaps live in New York or live in the South. So important to understand that. Psychographics, so how do they think and what are their values and those kinds of things, especially with such a tense time that we're in right now. How people think and their ethics and their values also have very much come into play. And if you've already done a lot of work in understanding who your target market is, I think that's fabulous. I would also invite you to revisit it in today's atmosphere, in today's environment, because I've actually had a couple of conversations with some clients who have put me on hold. So I keep talking to them and waiting till we get back, right? But two of them that I've spoken to in the last week have shifted their focus when it came to their values. And I won't go into a whole lot of detail about that because it's not my place to do that. But I think it's worth re-asking those questions in light of some of the tremendous shifting that's going on in our world today. Then interests and what do they like to do? I don't do a lot of Facebook ads. But what I love about Facebook ads is Facebook tracks everything we do. They track every page we go on. They track every like we do. So if I'm a dog lover, they know a whole lot about what other things I'm interested in, right? If I'm selling dog products and I'm a dog lover, but they know. So things like Facebook can really drill down on interests that people have to help you further fine-tune your message to your target market. So interests are really important. And then lastly, where are they and where do they hang out? So people are always asking me, where do I find them? Where do I go to sell my product? Well, go where your target market is. Where are they physically and where are they online? What groups do they belong to? Where do they shop? Physically, what networking groups are they in? What events do they go to? Really understand who they are and where they're hanging out, because that's where you need to be. And all of these are super important. However, the most important part of your target market, in my opinion, is answering these two questions. So if you don't get anything else out of what we talked about today, to me, this is the most critical piece of what we're talking about today, and that is your target market is solely is in addition to all those other things, a function of these two questions. The first one is, what is the problem that you solve? Because that's how people buy. So there's this idea in marketing called aspirin versus vitamin marketing. And I'd explain it to you like this. If I have a headache and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, I can't sleep, I can't do anything, I'm paralyzed by a headache, I will get up, I will get in my car, and I will drive to the store and I'll buy some aspirin. If I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I think, wow, I probably should be healthier, and a way I could be healthier would be to start taking vitamins, I am not going to get up in the middle of the night and go to the store and buy some vitamins. So while at the beginning I really pushed back on this notion of selling to the pain or selling to the problem. But I absolutely believe it now because I've seen it in my experience with my business. To identify what the problem is that you solve is key to marketing, because that's going to get people running to you saying, I need you because I have this problem and I know you can solve it. So the first question is, what's the problem that you solve? And then the second question is, how do you uniquely solve it? What do you do that sets you apart from your competition? And especially as you're marketing online, because people don't get the chance to see you and they don't get to engage in a conversation, it's even more critical online that you understand the problem and then how you uniquely solve it. Why do they want to come to you? What sets you apart? And then make sure it's in line with your branding, if you spent some time doing some branding. Then there's this concept which I just love of the elevator speech, and I wanted to touch on this because we've all, I think, heard of it and talked about it, but I'd like to re-rack it a little bit. When I think about an elevator speech, it makes me think of, I go to a networking event and I meet somebody and I say, so Joe, what do you do for a living? And he launches into this diarrhea of vomit on me of what he does and how he does it and blah, 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 blah. And that's typically what an elevator speech is. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever experienced that, but I've seen that a lot when you go to these networking events. So I'm gonna reframe it a little bit because I think the idea of an elevator speech is important. It's what you know you're going to say to somebody when you meet somebody that you have practiced, so that you're not fumbling and you feel real confident in it. First, I'd say 30 seconds or less. Second, I'd say it needs to talk about what you do, but it needs to talk about what you do from their perspective. So if I were to go to a networking event, I might say, my name is Janet Fish, and I'm a business coach, and I help entrepreneurs get more clients and make more money. That's about them. I don't say, I'm a business coach, and I spend an hour with you every week, and we talk about, and I help you grow a plan, and I ask you the right questions to ferret out, blah, blah, and then we put together a plan, and we design your marketing, and that's all great, but to me, that's just vomiting on me, right? What I want to know is, what exactly do you do? I help you find new customers, new clients, new prospects so that you can make more money. Like, that's about you. So what you do from their perspective, ask a compelling question. Would you like to make more money in your business? So, I'll be honest, I will be as bold as that. I'm Janet. I'm a business coach. I help entrepreneurs get more customers and make more money. Is that something you'd be interested in? Would you like to make some more money in your business? I've actually had people say no, but not very many, right? And then it becomes a discussion about them. Tell me more. Tell me more. Engage in conversation. So my dad, God rest his soul, best sales guy in the world. He was just amazing at what he did. But he would talk to anybody and everybody. I mean, it would take an hour to get out of the grocery store because he'd got to talk to the person behind the counter. People, and my dad always said, people love to talk about themselves. So when you're in those networking groups or you're in that conversation, and it's now we're maybe even getting towards a sales conversation, engage in the conversation with good, compelling questions. Let people talk. Spend more time listening and less time talking. So I have this guideline. It's not statistically accurate, but I use it all the time. And I say so let's say I'm trying to sell Brian on a coaching program, right? And so we're having this conversation. So my guideline is the percentage of time that Brian is talking versus the percentage of time that I'm talking is the percentage that I will have of getting the sale. So if I'm having a conversation with Brian and I'm selling him this coaching program and he's talking 90% of the time, I have a 90% chance of making the sale. Versus if I'm talking 90% of the time, I have a 10% chance of making the sale. So while, like I said, not necessarily statistically accurate, it's really something to keep in mind. And then the other thing I'll say, and we'll go into deeper dive on this when we talk about sales, because I'll go into some really deep stuff regarding the sales conversation. But one of the things that I find with some of my clients, when they get into that conversation and now they're getting towards the sales component of it, and then they get stuck, and they because they don't know quite how to transition into the, so will you give me your credit card and let's agree that you're going to pay me to do this thing. So I get that, and like I said, we'll go deeper in that. But what I want you to also take home is, when you're in that conversation and you start to feel a little bit stuck, ask them a question. Even if it's a question that just gets the conversation back on track. If you feel like the conversation sometimes it goes off the rails. Sometimes it languishes, like it loses a direction, right? So whenever you're feeling like you're in a conversation and you feel like things are going off the whatever, ask them a question, because that will get you back on track. That will give you some chance to get your footing back, to redirect it back to where you want it to go, buying you some time so that you can kind of regroup. So your homework is to create your elevator speech, which would be what you do and from their perspective, and maybe a couple of compelling questions. And then if you're one of those people who are like, I need to have it just flow, then practice it. So create it and practice it. All right. So to wrap up, your homework is submit whatever questions you have in the chat or on the Facebook page. Go through your why, write it down, and put it someplace where you can get to it if you need to. Set some goals and share them with somebody. Feel free to share them in the Facebook group. Determine what your business is if you don't already have one. Go find a model company or two. Opt in and learn as much as you can about what they do. And then define your target market, the demographics, their interests, and answer the 2 questions. And then work on your elevator speech. So I'm going to wrap up, and then I'll go to the chat, or I'll open it up to you guys if you've got any questions. But I did want to go through what's coming. So Thursday will be Q&A. So depending on how many questions there are, we'll have a long or a short session. So week 2, next week, so that'll be next Tuesday, we'll talk about the product funnel. So those are, what are the products that you sell? And we'll look at it from the standpoint of your free, irresistible offer at the top, and then your book or your $7 to $12 offer, down to your expensive items in the bottom of the funnel. And we'll talk about what we call, the lifetime value of a customer. So how you sell them the first thing and the next thing and the next thing. So we'll take you through the product funnel. We'll talk about some ideas to create product if you don't have any. It's pretty easy actually to create products. I'll take you through some exercises on how to do that. Then we'll talk about forecasting revenue, because any successful entrepreneur has a forecast of their revenue, of what they expect every month. And then they go back and look at it and they adjust. So we'll spend some time on the revenue forecast, and then we'll spend a good amount of time on marketing and how to put together your marketing strategies, and how to go back and really look at how effective they are. Because I have found, surprisingly, how few people actually go back and analyze their marketing strategies to figure out what's working, what's not working. The following week, we'll talk about networking for leads and how to build your list. So how you can build your list of email addresses. We'll talk about email marketing and effective ways for you to actually use those lists to market online. And then we'll talk about sales, and we'll have some fun with the sales, because I love sales, and I can't tell you how many clients I've had who say I can't do sales or I hate sales. And I've been able to re-rack their brain around sales isn't that hard, right? So for some people, sales is very challenging. For some people, it's not. But we'll go into a fairly deep dive on some strategies and some ideas around sales. And then the last week, We'll talk about systems because your business needs systems. So we'll talk about the different types of systems your business might need. We'll talk about team, how to hire team. And so I'll give you an exercise on how to figure out who to hire first. And then we'll talk about the analyzing and revising of all the steps of your business. So every quarter, at least, you should go back and analyze all these components of your business. And annually, you certainly should go back and analyze the business and regroup and get ready for next year. So we'll talk about how to do that, and then we'll talk about some next steps for people to stay engaged in this conversation with this group as we go forward. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to go to the chat because I haven't looked at it. So does anybody have any questions? So Tiffany, you said, is that true in interviews as well? What do you mean by that? Can you unmute yourself? Tiffany?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to figure that out.
No problem.
It was, you kind of answered it when you were talking about the interview. Like, in my company, I have to interview. Each client is always an interview. And then they go have their baby, and then I have to interview again. You were talking about asking them questions and having them talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And when I'm in these interviews, I'm constantly talking. So that's what I was asking. Is like, is the elevator speech similar to the interview time, or is it different?
Well, so it was. So okay. Well, let me ask you this: in your business, when you're having those conversations, they've already hired you?
They have not.
Okay.
It's the interview. So like the elevator speech, I have that down fairly easily, but when I go into the interview, I feel like I talk too much.
So the interview is probably more along the sales process than, like, to me, the elevator speech is how we get our conversations going, right? And then the interview for me, because I also end up on the phone with someone or in face-to-face, before someone hires me to coach them, it typically isn't a short conversation. It's an extensive conversation. So to me, that's the sales process. And although I don't know what your conversations sound like, I would still think about how much are they talking because to me, the sales process is getting to what they want. And for everybody, it's different. So you are a midwife?
I'm a doula.
Doula. So that's after they give birth?
I do both birth and postpartum. So they hire me to be with them during their birth process and after.
So so we'll cover this in depth in the sales component.
Okay.
One of the things that I do when I'm talking to people, I'm always talking to people about making more money because that's what I coach on, right? I'm a business coach. So let's say I would go to you, Tiffany, I'd say, would you like to make more money in your business? You would say yes. Then I would say something like, what would your life be like? And I'd say, tell me more, and you tell me a little bit more. And I say, well, what would you do with the money? I would put money away for my kids' college education. I'd go on vacation. So I get into their head and then I say, what would your life be like when you have that money? What would your life be like when you no longer have postpartum depression? And I get them in their head feeling what their life would be like. And I actually go to the point where it's kind of uncomfortable asking them questions, right? Yeah. And the questions that you're asking them are also going to be very personal, just like the questions that I ask because I'm talking about their financial life. But I go down and I don't stop until they're sitting there and they're seeing their life in the way that it will be once the problem that I solve has been solved. And so that's a really and I call that getting to the emotion. So to me, if I'm talking to someone about birth and their fears around that, or whatever it is around that, and then postpartum depression, what will their life be like when they're past that? And it is amazing to me when you get someone to the point where, when I get them to the point where they envision their life with extra money, and it's not just about extra money, it's about the freedom that it gives them, right? When I get them to the point where they're feeling that, they're like, yes, I'll hire you. And they're not like, I'll hire you, how much are you? They're like, I'll hire you. Like, I need to have you. So that is super powerful, that I invite you to try that.
Okay.
Try asking some of those questions about what their life might look like.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Any other questions? Let's see. Go ahead, Denise.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the demographics. Self-care is, you could say it's for anybody, but
Right.
I've heard that when you have an anybody product, that you're not getting anybody to sign up.
That's true.
So I don't know what to do about that.
Okay, so I absolutely agree that if I try to sell to everybody, then I sell to nobody.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit extreme. But let me also separate that out into two different things. If I'm face to face with you at a networking event, I can, by asking questions to figure out where you are, I can tailor my answer, right? So it's much easier to do when you're face to face with someone, or you're on the phone with someone, to turn the conversation so that you can help anybody. What's exceptionally hard to do is to do that online or in advertising. So what I would suggest is you find a subset and start there, right? So, and I've said that to clients, and they're like, well, I don't want to just stay there. And I said, I get that, but just stay there for online marketing. You can go and you can sell your self-care to anybody and everybody, but it's really hard to market it. So pick an area that makes sense to you, that you've had experience in, that you have some clients in, and market to that specific particular problem.
Well, my book is Self-Care for Boomers, so I guess that's sort of,
Great place
I
to
could
start.
start with that.
That's a great place to start.
Okay.
And then I love that because I'm sure that you have thought of self-care for millennials and self-care for doctors, and self-care for anybody and everybody.
Right.
But yeah, picking a spot to start, especially when it comes to online,
Okay.
is a great place, and then it can grow from there, right?
Yeah.
You can have multiple types of marketing strategies. And I'll use Susie an example because I know Susie very well. She sells to entrepreneurs who need a book to market their business. She sells to people who are writing children's books, right? She sells to people who are writing the book, right? Not the itty bitty book, but the book. And so she wouldn't market to each of those people the same. She'd market to them differently.
Okay.
Right, Susie? Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yes.
I got it.
So,
But I want to say something to Denise. When you just said, Denise, the fact that what Janet said, you have self-care for boomers, self-care for millennials, self-care for golfers. You've got an awful lot there. It's huge.
yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I already have self-care for massage therapists, which is my profession in the
Right.
past.
Right.
And then,
You froze, Denise.
what?
You froze.
Yeah, say that again. You froze.
I already have, my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have already written, I haven't published, but I have written sort of a book on self-care for massage therapists, which is really long, so I have to fix that. And also I could do self-care for expatriates. So I have 3 pieces already, so I'll just develop those. Start with that.
So Denise, so the content could be 90% the same, right?
Exactly.
Right. So the
Yeah.
content's the care is the same. But I really want you to think about, because I think it makes it pretty easy. Think about what is the problem that you solve. What is the problem that a
Okay.
baby boomer has versus an expatriate versus, what was the third one? Oh, massage
Massage.
therapists,
Massage.
right?
Yeah.
So what's that problem for them? And that will
Okay.
help in your marketing messages because then you'll be specific to them. So Laurel,
Great.
can you say
Thank you.
more about your question?
Sorry, I had to unmute.
It's okay.
Taking notes. I didn't think you wanted to hear the tap, 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 tap. Well, here's what came to mind when you were talking about picking a model and then do what they do. There's a lot of hype out there. So then the question in my mind is, how do you pick a model and how do you actually know that they are successful? Because all entrepreneurs will say, yes, 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 I'm successful. And you know as well as I do that there's some percentage, which is probably pretty high, that actually aren't successful.
Right. What do you do, Laurel?
I up-level communication to improve sales and relationships.
So I would go look for a high-end sales company.
Mm.
Not
No, because it isn't about sales. It's about influence.
okay.
Now, some of the underpinnings are the same, but the languaging can be different and how you go about it is very different.
So then I would.
And mine is informed from NLP and energy work, and it's coming from a different direction
So then I
than
would.
most sales entrepreneurs are coming from.
Then I would go to who has your target market. Who's your target market, and then who is selling to them as well.
Well, just like Denise, when you're talking about how do you influence somebody, it may be influencing them in an idea. There are a lot of target markets, and when I first started out in my conversations with Susie and Itty Bitty, my first concept was NLP for healthcare providers, NLP for teachers, NLP for parents, NLP for technical people, and how to apply the rules of NLP, which are fundamental to communication in those environments. Now, I've backed off of that and chosen not to use NLP because there's mixed messages and mixed perceptions in NLP in the marketplace. I don't want to re-educate the marketplace or fight that. So I really came down to narrowing my focus around communication. So how do you up-level your communication? Utilizing still a lot of those techniques, for different markets. So I could go after multiple markets. At least I understand I need to pick one, start with it, develop it, and then I can go on to the next one.
Right.
And so, I keep coming back to healthcare providers.
Right.
And there's lots of challenges in the marketplace for that because it's a profession that is under dramatic change and dramatic pressure.
Sure.
And so it's a moving target as a result. So maybe I ought to start somewhere else. But education now is dramatically changing.
Sure.
Yep. Because of COVID, it's driving new changes, how technical people work.
Right.
So I have to revamp a lot of what I'm doing because all of these changes you talked about that are occurring today that we may not have envisioned in the past
Right.
now are changing how people work and communicate and everything else. So,
Yep. Well, and so I wouldn't get bogged down in the model company thing.
the what?
In the model company.
Okay. All
I
right.
wouldn't get bogged down in that because you won't really be able to even get there until you come upon the market that you're going to go after. I'll say this, and I will say it just up front, Laurel. I know how trite this sounds, but I really believe that in every challenge there's an opportunity, And so as we look at the way, let's take education, for example, like the way we're going to educate our children going forward is going to be different. It could be, bye Susie, it could be slightly different. It could be radically different. And I don't know that we yet know, but I also believe that. Go ahead.
Yeah, here and I'm right with you on
Yeah.
that. I'm on the positive side of things. I'm not going to wallow in, oh my gosh, there's too much uncertainty and so on. In fact, I run a mastermind that's looking directly at that, from uncertainty to opportunity.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we really talk about it's one of my favorite quotes really talks about the fact that the best way to predict the future is to create it.
Yeah, I
So
love
we're
that.
really driving our mastermind members to creating the new normal and the new future. Or
Yeah.
even if it's just trying to change how you live your life and what you do, it's a new normal. But
Yeah.
it's not a new normal, it's your new normal.
That's right.
So once you define what your new normal is, now you can move forward with much more easily. So I think you and I kind of answered my stuckness here, and that is that I need to go define it because it's changing anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And I absolutely believe that those of us right now who are working and trying and opening and looking rather than sitting and waiting and all of that, we're going to be those opportunities for change. We're going to be the ones who seize those opportunities.
absolutely, and
We're
I'm
not gonna
all
be-
about seizing them.
Yeah, we're not going to be sitting on the sidelines and waiting till it's over and waiting till someone else figures out what it's going to be. We're going to be, so I got a little gnat. We're going to be those forces for change. I really believe that.
Oh, I intend on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And it's challenging in an environment of uncertainty where my market is trying to figure out who they want to be when they grow up,
Yeah,
regardless of which market I choose to go
Yeah.
into first.
yeah,
And healthcare probably has some of the greatest pressures right now because they're impacted by what's happening at the governmental level.
absolutely.
I mean, there's just so many different pressures going on in healthcare, and the corporatization of healthcare, and the cookie cutter approach to
Absolutely.
healthcare. This is, oh, you have these symptoms, this is what's going on. Well, no, doc, I don't think you've really listened to me very
Right.
well.
Right.
I don't have time to listen to you because I'm judged by how much time I spent. It's
Yeah.
just, it's an atrocious environment, and it makes it very difficult for me to go in and help them. So
Right.
I may pick a different target market just because it has the greatest pressures on it right now, coming from so many directions.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out.
Well, and that's okay. I mean, there's some things that I've had to shift some things in my business, and I still don't know where they're going to go.
Yeah.
But-
So I don't know that there's any model today.
And they're, like you said, they're
what I think is going to happen in the future. So I'm going to be the model. How's that?
Good. I love that. I absolutely love that. All
Or
right,
trying to be anyway.
we only have a few more minutes, but I'm going to ask this. Since I've answered most of the questions, I think that because I'm just making this up as I go along, just so you know. I think that I won't do Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'll just do Tuesdays, and we'll do the content piece, and we'll answer any questions here, or if you get, as you're going through it, if questions come up, we'll answer them on the Facebook page. So that instead of this being 2 times a week, how about we just do it 1 time a week and we do it on Tuesdays?
Fine by me.
Does that work? All right. So I will send out an email. I will send out the replay. I will send out the documents. If you haven't asked to join the Facebook page, please do so, because that's where you're going to find all of the information.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies. This was awesome. I really appreciate you. Any feedback for me? Any thoughts? Yes.
Yeah, it's really helpful to have the blueprint you gave us, to have a structure. because that's not the way I operate.
Oh, you mean just telling you what we're going to do each time?
Well, no, telling us what to do, how to,
Oh,
what we need to do, step by step. Because I'm more of a dreamer, and so it's hard for me. I don't function that way, which is why I don't have a thriving business.
right. Well, and I will continue to do that, the
Yeah.
piece by piece. Like I'll ask you to put together your product funnel, so what you're selling. I'll ask you to put a revenue model. We'll create our marketing plan, right? So
Yeah.
this is not just let's talk about it. This is a let's do it. And I'll give you templates for everything, so that hopefully it's more like just filling in the blank than creating it.
Yeah.
So awesome. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, ladies, you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.